Warning: the following video contains spoilers from the movie. Watch at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is the fifth and final adventure of the heroic archaeologist, in which he has to retrieve the powerful Dial of Destiny, or Archimedes Dial, or the Antikythera. Indiana Jones 5 is out almost 15 years after the 2008 Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And the new film brings back old characters, but this time Indy teams up with a new character, Helena Shaw, Indy's goddaughter. Helena is trying to find the two halves of Archimedes' Antikythera, a device that her father and close friend of Indy was fascinated with. Indiana helps Helena race against Nazi Jürgen Voller to find the two halves of the dial. However, everyone has different motives in this story. Helena wants to sell the dial to the highest bidder. Indy stands by his motto, "That belongs in a museum!" And Dr. Voller thinks he can use it to travel back to 1939 and win World War II. Voller is right, but they don't travel back in time by 30 years, but 2,000 years. As Indiana finds himself at the siege of Syracuse, 212 BCE. Indiana Jones 5 turns out to be quite the adventure and has led to many questions, perhaps the biggest of which is what is the Archimedes Dial of Destiny, or the Antikythera? Is it real? Well, you might be surprised to know, in 1900, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers came across a shipwreck. The ancient vessel's crew members were blown off course by a storm, and they sheltered on this little island of Antikythera, which is beautiful but very treacherous. The sponge divers sheltered there, and when the storm passed, they dived down. The first diver to go down came back terrified, talking about how he'd seen a pile of rotting corpses on the seabed, men, women, horses. It turned out that these weren't corpses but remains of statues, and the shipwreck was full of treasure. The ship set sail between 70 and 60 BCE. It was coming back west from Asia Minor coast, the eastern Mediterranean. Initially, it was thought to be a Roman vessel bringing looted treasures home. Further analysis of the wreck suggested it was actually a Greek trading vessel that was carrying this luxury cargo back home. Either way, hidden among the marble statues and jewelry was a mysterious device known today as the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism dated back to 2,000 years ago. It is the pinnacle of ancient Greek technology. The mechanism, held in a wooden case, is a bit like a clock that might go into a mantelpiece. More than a millennium before 13th century Europeans invented the first mechanical clocks, the Antikythera mechanism employed similarly complex technology, including gear wheels, dials, and pointers, to chart the cosmos. The ancients used it to predict eclipses, track the movement of the sun and the moon, and even see when sporting events like the Olympics were scheduled to take place. Although it is contrary to what Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny makes of the Antikythera, the mechanism won't transport you back in time. Not literally, at least. Every Indiana Jones adventure needs an exotic MacGuffin, and in this movie, the hero chases after the Archimedes Dial, a fictionalized version of the Antikythera mechanism that predicts the location of naturally occurring fissures in time. In the film's 1944 set prologue, Indy captures a train loaded with Nazi plunder, including the titular Dial of Destiny. The movie then jumps ahead to 1969. Indy is set to retire from teaching archaeology, and the world is celebrating the safe return of the Apollo 11 crew. One of the men most responsible for the United States' victory in the space race is Jürgen Voller, a former Nazi who was given sanctuary by the Allies in exchange for his expertise, much like the real-life NASA engineer Wernher von Braun. When Indy learns that Voller wants to use the Archimedes Dial to travel for nefarious purposes, he reluctantly dusts off his old hat and bullwhip to again keep a potentially devastating weapon out of Nazi hands. At the time of its discovery, the actual historical device was encased in a corroded lump of metal. Experts only began to realize the object's significance in 1902, when the clump broke apart to reveal an intricate network of gears. In the decades since, scholars have used X-rays, CT scans, and other tools to study the 82 surviving fragments of the mantle clock-sized object. A team writing in the journal Scientific Reports presented a computational model of the mechanism, offering the clearest sense yet of how the device might have worked. Still, much about the mechanism remains unknown, from its creator to the meaning of the inscriptions scattered across its surface, and as well as its overall purpose. But one theory, apparently picked up by the movie's creative team, attributes the technology used in the device to Greek mathematician Archimedes. So, who was Archimedes, and did he really create the Antikythera mechanism? Cicero, a writer and politician around the 1st century BCE, wrote descriptions of devices similar to the Antikythera. However, there isn't any technological detail about how the machines could have worked, so historians have never really been able to get quite far into this mystery. Cicero talked about bronze machines, globes, that turned to show the motions of the heavens, and one of them he attributed to a philosopher named Posidonius, who lived on Rhodes in the 1st century BCE, at exactly the time scholars think the Antikythera ship would have stopped off at the island. The main theory is the device was made in a workshop on Rhodes, perhaps Posidonius's workshop, perhaps as a commission for a wealthy buyer in northern Greece, or was being shipped from Rhodes to northern Greece when the ship sank. Cicero also wrote about another device constructed by Archimedes. Archimedes lived a couple of centuries too early to have made this particular Antikythera mechanism, but he could have invented this idea of representing the universe or celestial motions in a machine using bronze gear wheels. Archimedes was well known for his inventions and scientific discoveries. The most famous of these were the Archimedes screw and Archimedes' principle of buoyancy. Legend has it that he discovered this principle while in the bath, that the more of his body he submerged in the water, the greater the amount of water that overflowed the bath. Upon making this discovery, he is said to have run naked through the streets of Syracuse, shouting, "Eureka!" When the Romans invaded Syracuse in 214 BCE, Archimedes invented engines of war to defend the city, including cranes to drop rocks, claws to fit ships from the water, and machines to fire wooden missiles. He also devised a system of mirrors that focused the sun's light on enemy ships, setting the ships on fire. After the Romans successfully captured the city in 212 BCE, Archimedes was killed by a Roman soldier after he allegedly told the soldier, "Don't disturb my circles," a reference to a series of figures Archimedes had outlined in the sand. So Archimedes would be our prime suspect for the person who invented this entire line of technology. But why? Why was the Antikythera mechanism built? What did the ancient Greeks use it for? The dial on the front shows the sun, moon, and planets around the sky, eclipse predictions on the back, and Olympic predictions. But the mechanism was not a navigational device. There's nothing it could do that you couldn't accomplish much more easily with other well-known types of navigational instruments. So then perhaps it was used for astrology. The ancient Greeks were trying to map out the heavens. Could you have used it for casting horoscopes? Turning the dial to a particular date would allow you to see everything that was going on in the sky at that point. But again, it would have been a lot easier to cast horoscopes using astronomical tables that would have been available at the time. You wouldn't need something like the Antikythera mechanism unless it was used for more of a philosophical device or a teaching device. Some of the inscriptions on it are almost like captions aimed at lay people. They're not instructions for a professional. They explain what is happening as the machine is working. Another aspect that's actually mentioned by Cicero is this idea of a divine creator of the universe. Look at a machine of the cosmos, and you know it must have had a creator, a designer. The device was making the point that the universe itself must have had a creator. So there's a lot of deep religious and philosophical principles embodied in it.
At least 2,000 years old, 2,000 plus, and we know that there had to be more than one of these things.
Yes, you can't have something like that without a vast effort behind it.
Connecting the natural and somewhat magical supernatural aspects of the device leads to what we see in Indiana Jones 5. So what do you think? Has Indiana Jones 5 really captured the essence of the real Archimedes dial?